Good morning. It is so good to be here, and it was just wonderful to hear that last session and how, even though some of you are in the beginning phases, your passion, your love for students, your love for your discipline is just so evident, and it's an honor to be among you and listening to you and working with you. And given that, I also put together a presentation that's a little bit complicated because I had a whole lot of handouts or camera-ready activities that I wanted you to take into the classroom and kind of experiment with them. So I have a whole bunch of handouts, but I couldn't, we didn't think logistically it was really in anybody's best interest to produce all of them. It would have been hundreds and hundreds of pages. So if you look at the one handout I did make for you, on one side of it, it has this little code, and that is CQR something code, and you can get that with your smartphone, and you can just click on that, and it will take you to all of these documents. So these are posted on my Google Docs in my account, and you have open access to them, and they're all camera ready, so that if you like any of them, you can use them immediately. And I'm going to be referring to them, and we're going to be showing them to you on the big screen, you know, as we go through the presentation. So here we go. The first thing I noticed when almost all of you talked about, and even last night when I had an opportunity to talk with just a few of you, is that there's a lot of giving up of stuff as well as there's a lot of gain. But that's kind of the nervousness of any kind of a redesign is, what am I going to give up? And what is the value of what I'm gaining as opposed to what I'm giving up? And in all honesty, we're building on our sound pedagogies. We're just blending them. So all the things that we're doing in our reading class, we can bring them into the writing class. And all the things that we're doing in our writing class, we bring them into the reading class. And that's the true nature of the integration, is that we don't have to figure out a new way to do every little lesson in the class. We just have to figure out how to flow, how to set up the flow of instruction so that students can make that reading-writing connection. So first of all, you're building on what you already know. You have so much prior knowledge. And to that end, if you look at that handout again on the page that has the code, on that side of the page, I have a list, and this is like, I even put it in the format of a pre-learning. It's like a reading strategy, you know, like what do I already know? So if you look at this list, if you just went down the list and rated it from 4, a frequent use, to 1, I've never heard of it, just take a moment and just look at this list and evaluate your prior knowledge of the things that we're going to be looking at today. Now, I probably shouldn't have really done this because now you can see I'm not bringing you anything new, except maybe how to put these together in a flow of instruction that makes the reading-writing connection. So what we're going to try and do is we're going to try and teach students that what they're really doing is they are assuming 2 perspectives. They're going to think like a reader and they're going to think like a writer. And if those of you who are already pretty far into the redevelopment, you can see that although we're making the reading-writing connection, it is not that they are doing them both simultaneously. At any given moment, they are usually either reading or writing, which is why it did lend itself to early attempts where you would do first part of the semester reading, and then you would build on that pedagogy by then taking them into a writing focus. So that's not necessarily an uncommon approach, but because they're doing either one or the other. The exception to that is when they're doing all of the writing to learn activities that are associated with what they're reading, and we'll talk about those in a few minutes. All of what you're doing in your classroom is in the reading pedagogy, we call them directed thinking activities. A writing teacher has always done a directed thinking activity. So what you're really doing, all these things that I am showing you today, that is good, solid reading pedagogy. And the other part of the directed learning activities is a thing called a think aloud. And that comes up out of the reading pedagogy, where you really do verbalize the mental process that a reader goes through to understand, to make meaning. So if I'm reading something, the first thing is, well, what's the title? what does that really make me think of? Let me predict what this is going to be about. I predict that it's about X, Y, and Z. Well, now later in the reading, I see that my prediction was wrong, so I had to readjust my prediction, and I had to give up what I thought I was thinking to what the author is really thinking. You think it out loud with them. In the writing arena, that has been the role of peer editing. Really and truly, if you think about it, if we ask our students to really tell us how they got to the point where what do you like about your paper? What gave you the greatest problem with this essay? That's a think aloud. Now, writing teachers have been doing think alouds for a long time, which is sound reading pedagogy, and haven't even really been aware that that's what they're doing unless they've had the training in the reading. So again, you're already doing many of these things. It's just figuring out how to do it again in a very deliberate, directed thinking activity with a logical flow that best helps your students. So they should vary in purpose. Now this is where some of the what do we gain, what do we lose kind of thing comes into not having a dedicated reading class or a dedicated writing class. But what we're asking our students to do, whether it's in separate classes or coming together, we're asking them to read to learn. That's what the textbooks are all about. When they get into their psychology and their humanities and their biology and their math and all of that, it's just reading to learn. So learning how to read a textbook is a little bit different learning activity than reading to learn the news. You know, if we're going to ask them to read about current events, we are asking them to learn as they read about their world. So reading to learn, the language. I think about the literature classes that we taught for years and years, where we were teaching them poetic, like what is synecdoche? What is, or let's even go back to the developmental level. A semicolon, how to really use a semicolon. Reading to learn how to use a semicolon is a really wonderful activity that can be incorporated into the writing class. It becomes a reading activity. And it might be going to the newspaper and just finding how many times they use a semicolon and then trying to identify the type of sentence that the author used for that semicolon. That is reading to learn. And using reading as a model to learn structure, to model the language, and writing to model language and structure. In our developmental courses, and even in our freshman composition courses, for many, many, many people, maybe not everybody, the writing experience has been the writer's voice. And in fact, that's sometimes been a really difficult, not necessarily difficult, there's been some tension in trying to get students to tap into their prior knowledge and find good topics. But particularly for developmental students who haven't had a lot of reading experience, haven't had a lot of connection with text, they say they don't have anything to write about. And if you do inventories with them, what's your hobby? Nothing. What do you really like to do? Nothing. But they have passions, they just don't necessarily disclose to us. So writing to express ideas is where a personal voice is where most of our writing instruction has been in the past. And now with this, we're looking to have writing to respond to another person's text. But that's not the only way to make the reading-writing connection. It doesn't have to be that every single writing assignment has to be that they read something and then they respond to that, because there's all these other ways in which you can use reading and writing to learn as directed learning activities that would then build up to a reader response. So it's not that has to be the only way. There should be a variety for purposes. And that's what we're going to talk about with the rest of these handouts. Now this is all hyperlinked stuff here. I have the actual documents. These are the things that I was going to actually pull up for you like you would get handouts and we'd be looking at them, but we're going to look at most of them on the screen. The first one you have, if you would click on that first one, the reading writing strategy, you have that. It's this one. Amy mentioned that I am working on an integrated reading and writing textbook. It has been I'm right with you. I'm right with you in terms of trying to create curriculum that's meaningful and logical. So early on, I wanted to bring the writing process and the reading process and really stop and think about how does that truly occur. And because our students are so visual, I want to give them a graphic. I want them to be able to see it. I want them to have something in their hand that's tangible that they can refer to. It's like a baseline document throughout the entire semester that they're with me, and also when they move into their higher level courses. You know, transfer is a really difficult concept. They learn in our course, they pass the test for us, and then they go into those content courses, and teachers come back and say, why didn't you teach them? And we're like, we did. So when I give students something like this, I tell them, use this in your content courses. Take this with you. This is something that you can use for the rest of your academic career. Now, the way in which this handout is presented to you, it's like in the book that I'm doing, it just has the spread, but it doesn't have the little self-assessment to it. This is an actual self-assessment tool. So what I would ask students to do with this is in the very first week of school, when we're waiting for the attendance, I don't know if it's like this in your school, but in our college, attendance takes a couple of days to weeks to kind of settle down. They keep adding people to the classes if there's not a cap, you know. So in those first weeks when you feel like maybe you really can't get a whole lot of pedagogy out there because you're going to have to reteach it, this is a wonderful thing for students to look at and say, what am I doing? And because we think differently, you and I have a very different writing approach. You and I have a very different reading approach. There are about 100 people in this room. There's 100 different ways to read and write something. And the difficulty I always had trying to write for educators is that they wanted this linear set of assignments. Okay, give me your topic sentence, give me your outline, give me your first draft. And man, I couldn't get that done. I just couldn't get it done. You know, I'd have to go do my draft the night before. And so I always miss those preliminary deadlines. It's just something about the way that my mind works. It doesn't work linearly like that. And many of our developmental students are like that as well. So putting something like this in front of them is not saying, do it this way. It's saying, here is a strategy with a lot of helpful steps. What of these steps would you find helpful? What are you even doing right now? And I like to do this systematically throughout the semester, like I do at the first week of school, then I do it in midterm, and then I do it at the final. And the students love to see how they have changed. You know, and somebody asked earlier about whether or not you check a notebook. This is a wonderful, you know, the dreaded word is portfolio. You know, portfolio assessment, yikes. But this is a wonderful notebook activity. And it's like just done or not done. You know, you just assign a certain number of points for it being done. And on the back, I ask them to write, you know, what does this mean? Or how have you, after the first assessment, self-assessment, the next time I do it, how have you changed? What's changed about you? And students get so excited because they're really concrete thinkers in many ways. And they want something really tangible to show their growth. So this really, really helps them. Now, all the other handouts that we have will be a matter of where do we plug it in to this handout, to this process. So sometimes I find that, you know, if I think that they're doing all these, like their first self-assessment when they do this, they check it off, they do it, they do it, they do it. And that's why at the very bottom of it, I ask them to tell me how much time on task they put on each one. Not because they have to spend a lot of time, I just want to know. Well then, okay, they turn this in with their first reader response to me. And if the reader response indicates a lack of planning, a lack of proofreading, then we go back to their self-assessment and ask, you know, for some clarification here. Well, I see that you said that you did that. How much time did you spend on that? And so it also gives us as educators a way to really diagnose where their true needs are, and then to individualize that curriculum based on their behaviors and their disclosures. The other thing about students is, developmental students, is that I don't think that they really, not just developmental students, a lot of students who struggle, because not all struggling students are clearly identified as developmental students. Their self-esteem is sometimes skewed. Like, have you been with the person that really has told you that they made an A with their other teacher? And you just don't get me. Right? Or how about that student who's returning after a long time away and is so nervous and comes up after class and asks the most pertinent questions you wish that he or she had asked in front of everybody, and then makes an A and thinks that I do a lot of self-assessment, a lot of metacognitive, where they have to talk about their own learning. And I'll ask them, predict your grade every time they turn something in. What do you think you made on this? How do you think this performed? And those students who think they made an A, last semester, oh, I made an A. I know I made an A. If you don't like this, there's something wrong with you. And then that really humble, nervous student is like, I failed this. I know I failed this. Neither one of those are balanced views or realistic views. So having something like this teaches them how to be honest with themselves, because it does require asking them to go back and revisit it when they've given a skewed answer. Notice I didn't say dishonest, because I don't think that they're necessarily trying to be dishonest. I think that they really do struggle with realistic self-assessments, self-esteem. So, and that blustery person, that person is probably the most insecure and hiding behind that bluster and doesn't want anybody to know. So this really helps. This gives them an objective, concrete, non-emotional way, although they do get emotional. It comes back to, it's not about me, it's about your behaviors. Okay, let's go to the next one. But I have created a holistic rubric that is both a reading-writing rubric, because the whole purpose of rubrics for me are not for me. I mean, they are for me. They help me score. They help me score really quickly. They really cut down on my work time. I like to do a lot of holistic scoring and very thoughtful and well-placed trait scoring throughout the semester. But that's not meaningful unless the students understand that this is feedback for them. So I insist that they understand what this rubric is, and I even ask them to score each other's papers or a set of rangefinders that are anonymous that I bring to the class, so that they can learn the rubric. Because if they don't know the standard, how can they live up to the standard? So, and I even sometimes ask them to apply this to the real writers that we bring into the classroom, because sometimes, like even Stephen King, Why We Crave Horror Movies. I'm working with that essay right now. If you really put this rubric there, and if you didn't have Stephen King's name on it, you'd have a whole bunch of different scores from educators in the classroom. We all have what we value. So, it really, I even ask students to look and show that there's a wide variety, and what you're striving for is to identify what your needs are and improve your needs. And it also, again, shows where they can be strong or where they need remediation. And I really do divide my semester into, the directed thinking activities that I talked about earlier. I divide my semesters into 3 phases. Even the summer sessions, which were quite short, like your semesters are now. I think our summer sessions were 6 weeks. The first few weeks or days, whatever set of time, everything they do is for diagnostic purposes. I give them a piece of homework, they don't do it, I have diagnosed something. It is a symptom of something. If they don't do the reading, what they do and what they don't do in response to my assignments gives us information that we can identify their strengths and their needs. So at the end of that set of time, whatever time that is, the diagnostic time, I ask them to gather everything into a notebook, and these are some of the things that they could gather into that notebook. This is just, one thing. And if you go down a little bit, I ask them these questions. What do I already know? What do I need to learn? How will my textbook help me learn? How will the Learning Center or my lab help me? What study times have I set aside for this course? So what I'm asking them to do is to take everything that I've asked of them, every score that they've got their rubric, they've gotten scored assignments from me, a holistic one and a trait scored one. They've got notes that they should have been taking in class. They've got textbook notes, anything that they did for this class. I said, there's no busy work, and everything proves effort. And I'm convinced that if you make an effort, you'll learn. because you've got a wonderful brain. And if you just do it, you're going to really learn. So I asked them to give me this letter. After they do that, and I do find that they do need to revise that because they've never been asked to think, my students I found were never really asked to think about their own learning. They turned things in and then people gave them a grade and then they threw that grade away and they never looked at it again. And that's the difference between our students and those gifted students. Those gifted students are those successful students. They look at everything and they challenge you on everything. I'll never forget this. I taught high school for 3 years. I made it for 3 years. And I had the gifted program and I had the skills to gifted. I had the whole realm. And I'll never forget this one guy. He had missed the question on what was a monologue. And so I was going over the task because I like to go over tests with them so they can see what they get wrong and that they have to tell me why they got something wrong. And he went, well, you're just wrong. Your definition of a monologue is just wrong. He said, I was in a play last year. I went, I have a theater degree. And he went, oh, I thought you were just an English teacher. They love to challenge you. I welcome that challenge. Wouldn't you be thrilled if a developmental student came to you and said, I actually disagree with the fact that you think this comma is misused? Wouldn't that be heaven on earth? That would be so wonderful. That's my goal, is to challenge me. I'll even tell my students, if you really think that I've given you an unfair grade, take your work to my supervisor. Go take it to them. Let them look at it. If they agree with you, I'll change my ways. And I've had a couple of people take me up on that, and their work speaks volumes. That's an important lesson for them, that they have to understand that they need to do their own readjustment. Most students respond to this so wonderfully because it gives them a real path of direction and it makes them think about themselves in ways that they haven't thought before. The second phase of the semester is the working phase, and this is when they're doing the bulk of the coursework. Every single thing we do. This is where when they say, did I miss anything in class today? I say, you betcha. And you better find out what it is. It could be in your notebook, because that's how you're getting credit. Time on task as well as quality of task. And you're going to find the more time on task, the higher your quality goes. So everything counts. If a student wads up a pre-write and throws it away, I go and get it and smooth it out and say, shows effort. Instead of wadding it up, write on there why you're frustrated. I just can't get the right idea down. Just start doing a free write on it and put it in your notebook. Show me, Tom Cruise, show me the money. Show me the effort. Show me the effort. If you show me the effort, you're going to do it. So all of these are the things that can possibly be in a working portfolio. Okay, the next one, and then of course they have also, if you go down, what I need to learn, what is my barrier, what steps will I take to overcome this barrier. And now you can see we're in the affective domain here because these students really need this. Now I know you're thinking, how can I do all of this when I have to do reading and writing at the same time? This is reading and writing. This is writing to learn. Right here. This is metacognitive. And this is preparing them and opening their mind so that they can accept the ideas of other people. Because a lot of times what these students are doing is they're running a tape as they're reading. I don't understand this. I can't get this. I don't like to read. How many pages do I have to go? Then they stop and they count. They've got a tape going on. So what we're trying to do is we're trying to reinvent that tape, replace that tape. And then the last one, which is the last little bit of the semester, is their display, where they choose their best works to prove mastery. And then all three portfolios or all three sections of the notebook are turned in at the end of the semester. And their grade is, I actually gave 3 different grades for each portfolio, and so it was an average of those grades. This was very, very quick to do because I had I had rubrics, I had checklists, I had, when they were at their computers, I did individualized computer instruction. I would go to their elbows and do their notebook checks, right there. I could get through the whole class in one day. So, it's really a matter of just paying attention to them. Now, that's not doing trait scoring. Those papers that I took home and did trait scoring, that was a little bit more, laborious. Took a little bit longer. But a notebook check can be a very, very quick thing. And if the work isn't there, then it's an opportunity to intervene and find out why. And then a lot of times it's because of their affective domain. Their study skills, their life crises even. You know, I'll even stop them in the middle of their confession and say, you know, I don't want you to feel like you have to tell me this, you know, but because I know that this is a problem. What's the solution? They want to stay fixed on the problem. So that's why I want to ask them, what's the next step? Okay. And then here's my check sheet that makes it very quick. And I can do this as many times throughout the semester as I want to. And, you know, very, very quickly gives them feedback. They're eager for it. And I do a lot of peer teaching and peer modeling. The student who goes, oh, I made an A last year and you just don't like me, and has a, you know, notebook that thick. You know, we'll have like work on our notebook day. Let's get caught up on our notebook, or let's do a little notebook check. And then the gal that was super nervous because she just doesn't think that she's, you know, going to get it, so she overworks and her portfolio's this thick. So the guy with the one this thick and the gal with this, I put them together. They become, you know, I set up by looking at of their portfolios. And then this guy begins to see, or this gal, whatever, the non-achiever begins to see visibly what these achievers are putting into what effort they're making. Anything that I can do to make it visual for them. Okay, next link. And this is the cover letter that I asked them to give me with each one of their portfolios, or excuse me, for their reading writing assignment. Anytime they turn something into me, they have to answer some or all of these questions. The number of questions they answer varies based on where we are in the term and what I've directly instructed them on. So they're not necessarily going to get all of these questions at the one time, but, you know, I only have so much time with you, so I gave you all of them, you know. But these are those metacognitive questions that ask students to really deal with their own work. And see, it even, you know, talks about how to, when you get your teacher's feedback, and this is one of the logistics of your classroom, you know, that review and revise process, because the draft that they turn to you needs more work. But if you're doing a large volume of essays or paragraphs in one semester, how much time are you building in for students to pay attention to your feedback and go back and evolve that piece of writing into something that reflects their best voice? You know, so sometimes it's not volume as much as it is depth and drilling down. I think sometimes the reason we go with volume is because our students need high interest, need quick pace, need to be doing something different all the time. But that's kind of, sometimes that's like, you know, skimming just the top of the water when they really need to see how that revision process, you know, can really help their voice. Okay, let's just go back to the slide. You don't have to open up anything else. What do you think? See, you can see that this is called the big picture. You know, this is a big strategy, and it's really and truly, in all honesty, this is kind of like my solution. Not everybody buys into this. This is what I have found works really well for me, and I've used this in training teachers quite frequently, and a lot of people like it to adapt it. They never take it whole and use it whole. They take pieces of it and use pieces of it. And the other thing about this is this took me probably about 10 years to evolve. I didn't have all of this in place day one. I had to like create it. You know, and now that we're going into the reading writing, I'm going back into it and I'm saying, okay, so how can we really reinvent this so that it addresses the reading writing pedagogy? And it's working really well. It really, I mean, we're already doing so much more of this than we think we are when you really kind of look at the concrete things that we're doing. Okay, all right, so now this is again, you see I say one teaching approach, and this really focuses in on reciprocal teaching. How many of you marked on that preview that you have heard of reciprocal teaching before? I am not surprised. Well, if you'll click on that, because when you're talking about students who are not textbook friendly, and you would say that our students are not really textbook friendly, right? You kind of have to like get them into the textbook, and you know, there's even a new strategy out there calling Flip It, where they listen to the lecture, you know, outside of class, and they come in and they do their homework in class, you know, that kind of thing. So this is kind of like along that line. So this particular approach is group learning, and I use this with textbook. I introduce lessons doing this. Instead of saying to them, okay, read your textbook, pages such and such, and do this homework, and then bring it to me, and then turn it in, and then I'm going to talk to you about some more stuff and make a new assignment. Instead, to introduce a lesson, I put them in groups of 4, and they all have the textbook, of course. I give them a specific set of pages to deal with, not too many at first. And then I have cards that on each card, 4 cards for each group. One's it says summarizer, questioner, clarifier, and predictor. So what they do then is, they all read it. I give them a few minutes to read it, and then the summarizer has to say out loud what the main point is on that page. And then the questioner asks questions, and then the clarifier answers that question. And then the predictor talks about the importance of it. Students love this. And I would set aside no more than 10 minutes. It's like a wonderful thing to get them doing while you're taking roll, while you're getting your class organized, all that class business that you have to do. And then out of that oftentimes comes direction for instruction, the clarification of what your students know and what they need to know. So this is collaborative group work, and I use it for the textbook. This also has wonderful implications in the reading writing classroom in terms of reader response. Because if you can give them a really good piece, maybe, let me go back to Stephen King's Why We Crave Horror Movies, something that's accessible to them. They know about horror movies, they've heard of Stephen King, they read that, it's engaging, it's high interest, and then they do this, they have success. They feel successful. So getting them to do this with some high interest professional writers is a great way for them to, and then you can even make it, like if you look at the questioner, clarifier, and predictor, you could make it a directed learning activity where you say, how does he use semicolons? So that you can even get them thinking about that. And why predicting? Why do you think he did that? So it doesn't have to be just, there's all sorts of ways in which you can use this. Okay, the next handout is I created a little template for them so that they could, as a group and individually, every student has this. Sometimes I might ask one of them to also double as a recorder. So one of them is writing down the notes for the group, and then they duplicate it and they share it with everybody. But I really want each one of them, and this is a writing to learn experience. This is reading and writing. When you have them doing this, they are reading and writing. So what I'm asking them to do here is each one of them make their own record, because kinesthetically I want each of them using their bodies to learn. And it really keeps them focused on those 4 tasks that they have to do. And again, this is something by the end of the semester, the students are so much better at this than they are at the beginning of the semester. I had a wonderful experience where several students came back to me many semesters later and said, that's how we run our study groups in AP Anatomy. This is what we do now in our study groups. I remembered it from your class. So, if they understand that they're learning something not just for this class, but that can help them in these other situations, a few of them will get that. Maybe not everybody, but a few of them will. And so if you kind of go down a little bit just so that you can see, there's a place to summarize. Which brings us to the next slide. Because all the research indicates that one of the best, most effective teaching tools is summarization. If you can summarize it and put it in your own words, you own it. You know it. So summary is a really wonderful reading, writing strategy. But really teaching students how to do a summary, there's so many different approaches. So this is one approach that has worked really well. You delete unnecessary material, you condense, then you state the topic sentence, or you create a topic sentence. And then I give a sample paragraph, and then the next page, I show them a think aloud with the comments. This is what was eliminated, this is what was condensed, and then finally end with the summary, so that students have a model how to do it. And now I will take a little bit of time So if we're looking at a 6-week semester, you're looking at, okay, where do I work this lesson in? But it can't be just a one-time lesson because repetition is where they get that skill. They have to be able to do it more than one time. So teaching them how to summarize is a directed learning thinking activity. It's a reading writing activity, and it will really increase their ability to meet other learning outcomes as well. Okay, let's take a minute while we're on this slide to look at this. Where would this occur in this flowchart? Because you know what this flowchart is for me? It's not just a reading writing process for students to enact. This is my semester outline in a way. This is what I'm teaching them throughout the semester. I give them the overview to begin with, but then we really do drill down to each one of these steps. So where would this come in, do you think? Pre-writing and pre-reading. It's a great way to pre-read. Because I found that when we did this in the classroom with the textbook, most students returned to the textbook on their own later. And that's evident in their notebooks, the different activities that I asked them to turn in. So it's kind of like, whetting their appetite a little bit. So pre-reading and pre-writing, both of those. Because if you're going to do a reader response, to be sure that they can really build and respond to what they've read, then they really need to know what the author said, not what they think about what the author said. Lots of times in their summaries before I taught this, they went right into a reader response instead of a summary of the author's ideas. That's a step they want to skip. They don't really want to listen. No, it's true though. Okay, next slide. Okay, now these should be pretty familiar to many of you. The KWL stands for what do I already know? What do I need or wonder? What do I want to know or wonder about or will learn? And then what did I learn? So again, this is a reading writing strategy that can be used for the textbook. It can also be used for any piece of reading that you give them. A newspaper article, a journal article, even a peer paper. This is, the whole thing is creating a respectful audience. This is really asking them to put on a reading hat here. They're going to think like a reader here. What do I need to know? What do I want to know? What have I learned? And they're using their writing to do it. That is a reading-writing connection. Too often in this reform, I've been all over the Southeast with this reform, and people seem to think, I don't want to say that they absolutely, it appears to me that it comes down to making the reading-writing connection means that a student reads something and responds to something. That's the ultimate outcome that we build up to. But to get there, there are all sorts of reading, writing to learn activities where we can read without writing and we can write without reading. When we do both, we get better in each. And sometimes we just have to read and say, okay, what am I getting out of this reading? And then after I read that, how is this going to help me as a writer? That's an appropriate reading and writing connection. It's just going back to that flow of instruction. How often do you want to do that? Because every moment, you only have 6 weeks, and you're only meeting 2 times a week, some of you. So every moment with them is so important, which is why I like this flow chart here. Where am I going to build in a KWL? Where am I going to ask them to stop and think about what they already know? And, a good example, let's go back to that semicolon. I'll ask them, because they all need semicolon help, don't they? And they all need subject-verb agreement, they all need pronoun antecedent. But the semicolon, I say, when's the first time you ever heard that word? When is the first time you ever heard that word? In your entire life, when was the first time you heard it? Yeah, maybe 4th grade? 3rd grade? And how many times do you think you heard that word every year thereafter? You don't think so? I think a lot of them did. There's a thing called deliberate not knowing. was this wonderful little booklet that I read not too long, several years ago by a Jewish man. His last name is Kohl, Dr. Kohl, K-O-H-L. And he talked about how he didn't want to learn Yiddish in his family. He refused to learn Yiddish. It was a huge tension between him and his parents. And it took a lot of work not to learn Yiddish because they all spoke it. And then when he grew up and he began to value his culture, the great loss to him. And he's the first one that I had ever heard say, people choose not to learn. And sometimes we have to confront them with that. This is not really hard to learn. If you choose to learn it, you can. It's just whether or not you want to. Do you want to learn this? It's going to be on the test. But not only that, it's going to be in your life. It's going to make a difference in your job and your income. It is. Literate people get more money. They do. They express themselves. Sometimes they have to hear all this from them. So if they're choosing to deliberately not know, you can see it in one of these. And that becomes a place to have a conversation with them. Okay, next one. See, you all know this. You've all seen this. You've all had this. The Cornell 2-note. The only reason I'm giving this to you is because it took a lot of time to make this. And I thought nobody else should have to go through the pain of making this because students don't do it too well on their own. My daughter had math problems because, in all honesty, it took us years to figure this out because her handwriting was so bad. And she would go to, like when she was doing addition, she would make her columns go squiggly. So she was never really adding the right columns. Just, hello. just the way we interact with paper. Sometimes they need to have that model done for them, and then later they can create it. Imitation is the very basic level in the Bloom's taxonomy. He has the affective domain, the cognitive domain, but he also has the psychomotor domain. And imitation is the foundation. So when we ask them to imitate, we are not watering down the curriculum. We are giving them a solid foundation. Now, if that's all we ask them to do, we are, but we are not asking them to do anything other than what is building their literacy. Okay, the concept word map. And this is a reading skill. This is reading and writing in a reading skill that I'm bringing into the writing curriculum. And again, if you just take this and look at this, where would this come in? Pre-reading. They've got to do a vocabulary preview. They can't summarize anything. It's something like along the lines of out of 100 words, if they don't know 7 of them, they can't understand it. 7 out of 100 words, and they do not have comprehension. Isn't that amazing? So they have to, and you really and truly, a lot of reading textbooks, and mine do this as well, I determine which words I think the students know and don't know, and I make a vocabulary list. In my classroom, I make my students make that list. I want them to self-identify. What words do you need to look up? And that also asks them to begin thinking about what words are key, what words are important. So if I can make them do the work instead of me doing the work, hallelujah. That's what I'm looking for. So this is a wonderful pre-reading. This is also a really great pre-writing. Let's say you even want it to be reader response. I might say pick 2 or 3 key words from this essay, do some a word concept map for each one of them, and then do a free write about your own ideas, about what you learned, what those words really mean, how they relate to each other. So that they're looking at what the writer is doing with those words, and they're looking up the words, and they're getting a better understanding of what the word is, and then they're interacting with the word themselves. So that's not like a whole response to the entire reading assignment. It's just looking at the vocabulary, which, to tell you the truth, is their greatest need. Just looking at vocabulary. Okay, the next one. And while this is up, again, this is a pre-reading, this is a during reading, this is an after reading, this is a pre-writing. This one chart can be used in every one of those phases. And it's so wonderful for students to see that it can be, when they try and take Stephen King's Why We Crave Horror Movies, and try and put, okay, horror movies, why we crave them, now what are all the different reasons he gives? They're beginning to see they're modeling the structure, they're reading for structure. And this is a writing activity. This is reading and writing. This is writing to learn. And then when they take this and they use it for their response, like maybe it's like, well, why do you think people crave horror movies? Or think of something else that people really crave, like why do we crave Facebook? It doesn't have to be about the horror movies. It can be a model for a different topic, and then they use this concept map. And I know you already know all that, so I'll stop. And then the review, revise, feedback log. This is where the grammar comes in. I tell you, I got so sick and tired of pouring my life out into grading grammar and those students not paying one bit of attention to it. It was hours of my life. And I do it two different ways. I do a trait grading where I point out everything. I overwhelm them. I bleed on them. And I tell them, I'm going to do that. You just got to gird yourself. You're going to get a whole bunch of feedback because I want you to see patterns. I'm going to point out every single thing that I possibly can on this one piece so that you can see baseline, where are you starting. And the interesting thing about this is that when they put down run on, then I'll say, okay, count up how many times I wrote run on your paper. Ooh, 52. One error, one skill would eradicate 52 infractions. They get really pumped when they see that. Plus, this is a way for them to see their progress. 6 weeks later, are they still having that many run-ons? Well, come on now, take responsibility. Let's get some tutoring here. Let's get some help. Meet with me in my office. Talk with this gal over here who really knows about run-ons. Look at how she uses them. Really bringing them back to that. So this grammar and context. One of the things that writing teachers are a little bit nervous about giving up is the grammar instruction. And this is how you do it. And then you have a handbook and you have My Lab. They have these infractions. When they come up with this is their individualized plan. Of course they've taken the My Lab or some kind of a diagnostic grammar test. But I want to know how it's coming out in their own writing, in their application. So that diagnostic test is not what I use to set it's one of the things that we talk about, it's one of the things that we do, but it's this really where I say this is what you're going to have to study. And again, I ask them to come up with a study plan. What are you going to study first, second, and third? When are you going to do it? And what resources are you going to use? I also allow them to do revisions based on this kind of work. I will completely and totally replace their score if they've self-remediated and prove it. Yes. Yes.
Somebody takes the time to read it and comment specifically.
Right. And it's important to warn them ahead of time, like, this is a trait scoring. The purpose of this is for you to have this information. And not all the essays or paragraphs that you write in this class, you're going to get this depth of, you just not going. I do this 3 times in the semester. This real in-depth, you're going to hear it all. At the beginning, the middle, and at the end. All the way through, I do more, sometimes I do a lot of holistic scoring with the rubric. And then I also point out, like if we have just talked about a semicolon or a run-on, I'll grade for that. Directed grading, very focused and directed grading. And that, you can't even really, I don't even know how I'm going to do that until I'm in the classroom with that specific need, with that group of students. Because, my 8 o'clock class is very different than my 6 p.m. class. And the way they engage and they interact and even their level of comfort with text and what their values, their prior knowledge is. So I'm not exactly sure until I get into the classroom how I'm going to allow this to, there's got to be some fluidness as well within the curriculum.